So apart from the 1600-1700 period, the lower Dravida Desh, upper Dravida Desh is complete as a set. And but having discussed the terminological concerns and the concerns relating with the Shastras and Agamas, apart from that, given that you successfully transformed it from a dictionary to an encyclopedia, what are the other region-based, time-based organizations of the chapters as envisaged in the volume? How have you organized the material in the Dravida Desha volumes? I mean, dynastically or regionally?
No, both. Regionality has a primacy over dynasty, but without the stable central political power, many things cannot happen. Not that the dynasty always contributed substantially to buildings, not always. In some cases, yes, like Tirumal Nayak had built many gopuras, gigantic. He started, there are 30 gopuras which he has started and have remained unfinished. Like that.
One of the things that one gets to hear from some circles, not all, some circles, is that the organization of the chapters is oriented dynastically. And essentially, as I understand you from what you just told us, that the dynastic labels were used, have been used as convenient classificatory categories, but the region specific dimensions of architecture have been emphasized all along.
You see, it is a history on one side, region on the other side. Both are connected. You cannot ignore one and keep the other, maintain the other. The frontiers of political power fluctuated, so fluctuated the region, but not that massively. For instance, in the time of Siddharaj and Kamarpa, much of the lower Rajasthan, particularly the southern western region, western Malwa, were under Gujarat. Now, it can pose certain problems. How to categorize the monuments built during those times. But then we got some solutions, like Maru Gurjar, Maha Gurjar, in its spread. It's a regional term and cultural term, and according to the consistency and practicality, we actually use the designations.
So if you say the Chapas of Vadwan or the Chapotkatas of Anhilwad Patan, and then you also write Mahagurjar.
Mahagurjar denotes a style proper. The political part becomes subordinate to it. It's not here, it doesn't have that one.
So
but when you say, for instance, Mahagurjar, then we have 3 schools there, for instance, which can be discerned in front. Although it is Mahagurjar, there are 3 schools: Anarth, Kutch, Medapat.
So northern Gujarat
and Mewar,
the Mewar and the Saurashtra. Sir, the Mukteshwar temple ceiling and the Mukteshwar temple Toran are in a sense exceptions to the rule.
Anyway, but how will you describe it?
For that you have,
With the
I
help
think,
of your
used
Oriya
the
charts.
Western Indian or the Central Indian Vastu texts to describe
so
that.
we use that.
No, I'm saying you have.
I have used.
Yes.
Because they were applicable there.
Yes.
They were there.
Yes.
And say, Vedi Bandha, for instance, it is there. Shapes change from 11th century, Kumbha becomes reverted. Colors because they are flattened. But earlier, from 7th, 8th, 9th century temples, they have the standard common northern Indian tradition there. Now, Panchakarma, if you say, it is okay, I would put it in the glossary or in the bracket, Panchakarma, if you understand it then. But it is Vedi Bandha standard. Samaranga and Sutradhar, the earliest medieval text in northern India, that way.
So, but what in your opinion is, say, Professor Donaldson's reconstruction of the orisons, the specific terminology based on?
Based on Bhuvan Pradeep and what the Oriya scholars use today, he had taken from them, he had cited no Vastu Shastras.
The practicing artisans.
Practicing artisans, and they are also known to the local scholars. I forget their names, they are my friends, but now I have bad memory for names. Behra. And when they write, they use those terms. Okay. Now ask them to write on Keralu temples and let us see how will they do.
But here there is one question that comes to mind. Do we ignore the practicing tradition in favor of the text?
In Western India too, and Rajasthan too, there is a practicing tradition. There is a corresponding term.
The Sompura, Sthapatis.
Sompura say, Padharo, Pratirasa. You understand?
Okay.
Kevar is Kapotali.
So there is a similar tradition
thing, but
in
we have to standardize because there are shastras here. And there, Lakshana Samuchaya I am using. I'm not saying Viyanga, Triyanga in plan. We're being saying Trirasa, Pancharasa because there is a book, Shastra there, and what they say now has a basis.
For Western India, you have the treatises. You have Aparajita Pricha, you have Kshira Arnav, Deepa Arnav, Vastu Vidya.
Vastu Vidya, Vastu Shastra.
And
earlier. Kshira Arnav, Deepa Arnav I don't recognize.
You don't recognize. No. But some places you use it.
Yeah, but if there are earlier, older verses there incorporated.
Yeah. Okay. But Aparajita Pricha and the Vastu Vidya.
Because Aparajita Pricha is a compilation which based on earlier works and Vastu Shastra of Vishwakarma and Vastu Vidya Vishwakarma, Rekharanava, all these works were used by Aparajita Pricha. Also Samaranga and Sutradhar it has used. So it is not an original work, but it is also not just a compilation. Entire chapters as they are here, it has been incorporated. He had summarized, used his own language. He has used them in formulating. The author has formulated the whole book.
Now the
using different texts.
The fluidity of the texts from one region to another also indicates a kind of an interaction or a sharing, which comes out, say, for example, in the paper that you have discussed at length on the influence of the Samarangana Sutradhar on the Aparajita Pricha. Now that also, in your opinion, does that not reflect that the practicing architects, Sthapatis, or the priestly class. Somehow, how did this happen? Was there a kind of taking, borrowing in the
No,
copying?
I will tell you.
Yeah.
Sometimes the texts were copied and circulated. In Gujarat, a special case, the library of Bhoja was transferred to Patan and Hilwar after the conquest of Siddharaj Jayasimha. See? And that is how the Bhoja Vyakarana, when Siddharaj saw and showed it to Hemachandra, he said, if Bhoja can write such grammar, Sanskrit grammar, why can't we do that? He said, yes, we can do it, but we will need several texts on grammar, manuscripts. So Siddharaj got them from Kashmir and other places and gave them to Hemachandra. And Hemachandra wrote or composed his Siddhaim Sabdanushasana. Aparajita Puruša cannot use Samarangan Sutradhar for Western Indian architecture proper, but it is used for other styles. Also it is used for sealing certain things, but not beyond that. For instance, Viman Nagara, Dravida, there he had simplified what Samarangan Sutradhar had written and sometimes changed the vocabulary to make it comprehensible to the Western readers. But he forgot that when you change the term, its shapes also change. You understand?
So there is then the element of both copying and corruption in the corruption of the text itself.
Incorporations,
Extrapolations, interpolations.
So it's a complex phenomenon of working out a new work which is actually not an original work.
Now, how does this because you have worked very closely with Prabhashankar Ogarbai Sompura, and you have actually, lived these monuments, you have, lived among these monuments. You have known the Sthapatis well, you have interacted with them, and you have studied these texts very closely. What is the reaction, say, of someone like Prabhashankar Ogarbai Sompura, and when he reads, say, the Aparajita Pricha? So if the Aparajita Pricha belongs to the 12th, 13th century, and Sompura is practicing, his family is practicing, how does he interpret portions of the text? Because I notice, for example, in the Kshirarnav and Deeparna, Pratolya and Torana are very kind of mixed up.
Confusion.
Yeah.
In Shilling also, what he calls Gajatalu is call, and what he calls call is Gajatalu, according to the textual sequence.
Now, would we sort of, in that sense, do you recommend that we ignore the flux of time, that we do not look at the changes that have come in, since it's a fluid tradition?
The question is, when you are standardizing, pretending to standardize, then you have to do certain clearance in the confusions. See, to achieve clarity, even at the expense of what is currently known, currently used, we don't ignore it, but relegate it to the colloquialism, to the their parlance, and for writing purpose, the standard language, architectural language, that is needed to bring about uniformity in understanding. If you go on creating new words in language, for instance, who would comprehend? See, in Gujarati, they gave the synonyms of many, many new many English words which common man never come across, but they are in this standard high level literary world or literary criticism. They are used and they are translating them into Gujarati, and we have to create new words for that. It's new it's synonyms sometimes, paribhasha, terminology. But unless you give in bracket the English equivalents, and those English equivalents are also new words in that language, and how are you going to understand the meaning?
So then the kind of approach taken in the encyclopedia would be to sort of stop at the point in time when the maximum number of Vastu Shastras are available, which is say between the 10th, 11th and the 14th, 15th century. And since the monuments that you are looking at are also coterminous with that period.
Largely the medieval.
The early medieval and the medieval.
When you go to the earlier ones, then you have to search for the earlier works. Vishnu Dharmottara Puran, Brihat Samhita, like that. But there you, except Vishnu Dharmottara, which goes in some detail, still earlier works, Pitahama Samhita and Kirana Tantra, they don't give detailed information. Architecture too was not that evolved, and you have to go for, you have to search in literature, Kalidas and his contemporaries, or some before and after, Bhasa, and then Jaina writers, Samantabhadra, and like that. See? But you try to get information and try to create a corpus, assemble a corpus rather.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, in your wonderful photo archives at the American Institute of Indian Studies, which all of us have tremendously gained from, and I for one have really substantially gained from from the photo archives, and there is a very rich collection of what is considered the climax of the Northern Indian style of temple architecture, which includes the Kandariya Mahadev and Lingaraj Bhubaneswar, the Sun Temple Modhera. So I'm sure that volume was envisaged to be published. That volume was envisaged to be published, but
from 11th to the 15th century,
which is a very rich period of.
Right. But I was helpless. I'm sorry. 8 chapters had come, documentation in terms of drawings and photographs, all done. Question of just a year of sitting in it. In between interfered the Vijayanagar volume, it took 7 years. So the entire efforts were stopped at that point. And
why such a wonderful volume? Why was it stopped?
Stopped because all the draftsmen, photographers had to go to southern India to cover the Vijayanagar things.
So
we do is alternately.
This volume was stopped to complete the Vijayanagar volume, but after the Vijayanagar volume, this was not resumed.
But
time crunch.
Question is, what was my age by that time?
Yes.
You understand? And it was also decided under the influence of new Trendian arts that this encyclopedia series is useless and no further work shall be done. See, whatever has been done, one must stop at that.
This is something that came as a pressure.
I mean, it was a decision taken. I don't take decisions. I execute decisions.
So very
I would recommend if I'm consulted, but it was already done.
So that volume is lost to the world of readership.
This material is lying there. It's okay. And now I don't have energy to resume work on those volumes.
And priorities are shifting. Priorities are shifting.
Look, somebody like you should undertake it.
Beyond me.
I'm 86, and now whatever little I can finish now from the unfinished things, there are too many. I'm trying, that's all.
Sir, among
If
your
health cooperates with me for 1 or 2 years, a few more monographs would be out, that's all.
I know that you are working on a priority basis for the glossary volume, and you also have, in the process of giving all of yourself or almost all of yourself to this massive project that you upheld for and assured the standards of for more than 45 years. It was on your strength that this moved. In the process, I think you sacrificed a lot of your own monographs and your own writing, which also await completion, the Shatrunjay monograph. And I think you were reworking the one on ceilings to make it pan-Indian. That kind of retrospectively, if you look back, is there anything in the way that your academic career shaped, the amount of time that you took to standardize the encyclopedia volumes on behalf of other scholars, which you could have well invested in writing your own monographs? Do you feel any kind of, would you have liked to change anything in the way it shaped? Means would you have preferred to write your own monographs in that period?
No, because I tell you one thing, in trying to help out that way, I gained knowledge. I worked, I had to go to that area to work, because the quantity was insufficient.
Yes.
And I knew there were a large number of monument buildings, and our efforts were to include, to make it all comprehensive, the whole thing. So to leave out, one thing I had to leave out because editor wanted to quickly publish part 1 of volume 1. I said I have yet to cover some, to document some 40 to 50 temples recently brought to light by S.R. Balasubramaniam through his book. We have to include them. No, not saying.
The early
He just
Chola
vetoed
temples?
everything.
The early Chola temples?
Not in early Chola temples, but there were also 12th up to 13th century that volume goes. So 12th and 13th century there were several more.
How was your association? Tell us something about the famous team, the encyclopedia partnership between you and Professor Michael Meister.
Well, he was the editor. He contributed his own chapters in Northern Indian. That is volume 2. Some chapters he contributed.
Tell us about your meeting and how you met and how your association built.
Well, it
you
was
and Professor Meister.
done on a higher level.
I see.
Since what was being understood at the time was to edit from the American standpoint, the language, and it is okay. Editing is, in India, editing is not really done. But in the West, it is mandatory. And they are not ashamed of it. Even the greatest figures there, they give it to they call them readers, not editors, but two copy readers, subject and language. And they go through everything, every word. And then they make suggestions, which largely are incorporated by the author and acknowledged in the papers. Now, that is their custom, which we had to follow because it was an American institute, not an Indian, and it had its own benefit in some ways. Sometimes yes, sometimes not. Because the editors sound, when you give the full authority to alter things, then there are some losses also.
Now, from the year of publication of the first volume, 1983, when it actually came out in print, I'm sure it was completed earlier. Up to what point was Professor Michael Meister associated with the project?
Yes, for that he had some support, monetary, but afterwards it ceased to be. So he had given up. So I became both the coordinator as well as the editor.
Say from about the 1990s?
I don't know exactly the date, but it happened at some point.
Okay. And where was the funding largely coming from for this?
From Smithsonian Institution,
Okay.
which supports the educational and cultural activities and projects.
And from the Indian side, was there any funding?
No.
Not right till the end? Right till the end of right till the last, the 14th, the 7th set?
I do not know. Some help from Archaeological Survey of India came for the glossary volume in terms of money, which is being deposited there. And we have sent them the copy of the work so far done to assure them, because Government of India, I think our Director General or Vice President wrote to them to give monetary support for publication, not for the project.
And IGNCA published one of the volumes.
Yes, I think that is
IGNCA
publication
published.
funding.
Yes,
yeah,
the
yes.
Indira Gandhi National.
Right, Kapilaji.
Did the funding agencies, I mean, you just mentioned the Smithsonian Institution, so did that, did they also, I should, dictate is a very strong word, but did they also in some ways determine the way that the encyclopedia should be formatted, or did you have a free hand to format?
No, they are just publishing whatever is ready.
So you had the autonomy?
They never interfered because, no question. And we would not have accepted it. No. But that was not the original proposal we sent, nor did they ask. They didn't distrust us, or they didn't want to go through their own censures. No.
And did Professor Pramod Chandra, was he at any point involved during the inception of this?
He was there at the, see, as soon as he ceased to be in the management. Management asked for the edited chapters. I had sent him several. One or two we corresponded and changed. But afterwards he said, when the entire volume is ready, I will edit, not now. And which may take many years. I think at that time nobody had the grasp or conception of the enormity of the material. So you have to progress step by step.
You also covered a fair amount of Southeast Asian monuments, Cambodia.
No,
Java,
only Java.
Java and
South Asia, Sri Lanka, Java.
Sri Lanka.
At other places, it was not safe to go at that time. Cambodia was Vietnam and Thailand were included in our scheme. Is further India or as well Southeast Asia. Now,
but not with the idea
in
of Greater
Cambodia,
India.
that Pol Pot or someone is that communist. Vietnam, there was Ho Chi Minh and war between America and Vietnam was going on. How can we go there? So we focused on Java and Sri Lanka and Java.
Sri Lanka and Java, yes.
Sri Lanka doesn't have many temples, just a few at Palanirva. And it was to figure in one spatial volume where the entire Southeast Asia with Burma and Sri Lanka also included. That was planned.
Now, when you were doing this Southeast Asia documentation and Java, Central Java and also parts of East Java are particularly well documented in the archives. Was there an idea also to bring out a volume on Southeast Asian temple architecture?
That was my plan. That once we finish this volume, 1 and 2, a spatial volume devoted to Sri Lanka and Southeast Asia, because they are related. We can't bring in East Asia, China, it's a separate stylistic group. Although there is some sort of vague relationship, but that is through Buddhism, but they have their own indigenous style. Here the Indian elements had gone and manipulated, and through that process they created their own styles, but they are still recognized as related to India.
Related yet with their own identity is how you look at it. Is how you related but with their own identity.
Of course, there are separate styles in it's like Orishan style separate from Western India. This is even more. And again, their origins, some go to 5th century. We have ceased to work that way in India, in northern India. Chandi Arjun, for instance, floor, but it's not southern. The floor idea is northern, one of the Gupta types. See? I saw it, such kutas with Amalaka above in Nachina Kuthara storeroom.
Oh,
Yes.
like Chandi Arjun.
Like Chandi Arjuna, corner kuta, but instead of Kalasha above, Amalaka.
Very interesting. That study remains to be
It
done.
means that there was stratification above, not the archaic Shikhara. Some in Gupta had already integrated, some Sapatis, some had kept to the floor arrangement.
So we have the reconstruction of the Devgarh Shikhara in your encyclopedia volume.
Yeah.
Michael Meister and you. But the Nachna Kuthara Shikhara.
It was a Tala.
It was Dvitala, probably.
It seems so.
Yeah.
I think the Parvati, so-called Parvati temple had a superstructure that way. It's fallen all. but the pieces are in the storeroom.
Oh, interesting. I wonder if they are still there in the storeroom.
And another temple, the Shikhara of the 10th century, they put there. It was removed there. What is it called? The second temple? It's a lower finger.
Mahadev and Parvati, two temples there.
Mahadev?
Mahadev.
Okay, the name I forgot now.
In Nachinakuthara.
Nachinakuthara. So one of them,
Yeah.
and I think the other one, so-called Parvati, had a stratified Shikhar. Now, the rude sort of mechanism of the integration is seen in Saurashtra temples, Maitraka. See, they are stored but integrated already in some.
As at
But no, Gop is separate, it's Phansara,
tiered, Phansara.
earlier Phansara.
Yeah.
But Bileshwar has stored it up to a level. See, there are quarters like southern India, somewhat. One with octagonal cupola also. See, one quarter there. And another temple, entire temple at Bansara, has a cross and octagonal cupola like Dharmaraj Ratha, but plain.
In Saurashtra.
In Saurashtra has preserved some element. The default is no ornamentation at all. They are too plain.
But why default? It's nice like that also.
Anyway, you get at least the principles.
Yes.
See, in a very naked way, you see them there.
Barren. It's a kind of a barren.
Yeah.
Assam and the Northeast did not get recorded in the encyclopedia.
There are few things medieval. One or two resemble Western Indians, so artists may have gone there. Something is there, but not much remains.
But very different, the way that the superstructure of the Northeast temples.
Is there later. So the earlier things are retained there at a later century. As in Himalayas, there are frolicking dwarfs, tomatas in panels.
You're discussing the Dwarashakha,
Not Dwarashakha, but there is a separate piece there in one of the sides. And it's a convention of the Gupta temple. But there it is 8th, 9th century. So it is time lag, persistence of the older features. Same thing has happened in Java.
And the Hindu temples of Pakistan, which have more recently been studied by Meister now.
But there, see, there is Kashmir style related, then there is Saurashtra style related temple like Pastor, very much like Pastor. They are there. Sindh, see, he has taken the entire Indus tract, but there are regions there. Anyway, it's a very useful publication which gives you some notions of things there, but too small a book publication.
How would you ideally, in your opinion, ideally visualize the continuation of studies in temple architecture by the future generations? I'm talking hypothetically. What do you feel really needs to be done now ahead?
Look here, everything is now looked at from very different angles. I belong to my own time, so my views are not useful. Einstein's own theories were modified by the subsequent physicists, and they are not. He had made certain assertions, predictions. A few came true, rest not. Like that. So no question, Newtonians will completely even reject the whole thing.
No, I'm saying ideally what do you feel awaits the
But
attention
I
of the
can't
research.
see, problem is, I can't see beyond what I had seen.
No, things that you wanted to do, but and it,
I wanted to do part 3 of volume 2.
yes,
11 to
11 to 15.
material is there in the American Institute.
Northern India.
If someone coordinates, say, and passes into service the contributors like Nachiket and you and a few others who are interested in regional, working regionally, you can do. There are 7 or 8 chapters by earlier writers. Krishnadev, of course they are unedited, but they are lying there. If someone can convince the American Institute that we may want to further this and finish this volume, as long as I am alive, I may give some suggestions if that work is undertaken.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
How nice. Nice indeed
Thank you very much.
to talk to you.